last, or our final topics, I guess, on multiplying polynomials. All of the questions from today are going to be like your level 5-6 questions. So this is like as difficult as they're going to get because we're talking about like area of shapes with unknowns. It's things that I don't think like it's not a huge stretch, it's not a huge jump in difficulty, but it's just thinking about it slightly differently. We're on page 305. These questions do take a lot of time, and so they can be a little bit difficult in some ways, but that's about it. So the first one says, the area of the given figure can be represented as a trinomial in the form ax squared plus bx plus c. Determine the values of a, b, and c. At the end of the day, this question's asking us to find the area of the shape in simplest form. That's what the ax squared plus bx plus c is saying. On this one in particular, the shape's a little wonky. I wouldn't expect you to know all of the formulas that's going to be required here. So on this one, I'm going to just say, let's draw a line like this down here. So this is going to be like I'm going to call it a rectangle. It looks like a square, but we don't want to make that assumption. What is that other shape? Does anyone know what that shape would be called? Like this box here. Go ahead, Khalil. Yeah, a trapezoid. I don't expect you to know the formula for a trapezoid. If you do, power to you. But I would always give that to you. Let's call this chunk here, because that's going to be significant, side P, and this side Q. So we need to figure out the area. We need to find a couple pieces we don't know before we get there. So side P, how can I figure out what that side is? That length. Go ahead, Priscilla. Yeah. Good, right on. So we know we have the whole side length of 4x plus 9. We know this little chunk down here, so P would be our difference. So I have 4x plus 9 minus, we put it in brackets, the 2x plus 3, because we have to subtract the 2x and subtract that 3. This is something, if you can just do that in your head, awesome. I'm going to write it out for you. So we get minus 2x minus 3. 4x minus 2x leaves me with 2 x's. 9 minus 3 leaves me with a positive 6. Side Q. How do I figure out that? Go ahead, Khalil.
You subtract x, or you subtract 3x. Oh no, subtract 4x plus 4 from 3x plus 6.
Good, right on. So this is my whole side. I'm going to take away this chunk, and I'm left with my Q chunk. So I get 3x plus 6 minus, put that in brackets, x plus 4. Distribute my negative through. So 3x minus x leaves me with 2 x's. 6 minus 4 leaves me with 2. So we had to do all of that work just to solve for our unknowns. So from here, let's figure out the area of our rectangle. So my rectangle, and again, it could be a square. We don't know the value of x. Never make that assumption. Some diagrams in math are never drawn to scale. So we're going to have our 3x plus 6 times our 2x plus 3. Let's actually do this here. So doing this step is our basic FOIL. So 3x times 2x gives me 6x squared. So that's first. Outer gives me 3x plus 3. Sorry, 3x times positive 3. So I get 9x. Inner gives us 12x. And then last is 18. So that's the area of my rectangle. So then we have our trapezoid. So the area of a trapezoid is equal to the height divided by 2, and then like they say base 1 plus base 2, like that. It's basically like the top and the bottom of the shape added together. That's how you calculate the area of a trapezoid. That's something that I don't expect you guys to ever have memorized. So the height of this guy is our side Q, which is 2x plus 2. That piece will be divided by 2. Side P is going to be one of our bases. So we get our 2x plus 6 plus these little ticks mean both of these are x plus 4. When you have, can I zoom in just on the trapezoid portion? Yeah. When you have a fraction with variables written in it, you're divided, like how this is all divided by 2 here. It's like my first term divided by 2 and that second term divided by 2. Like you could split it up. So what'll happen is these 2's will cancel out. Also, those 2's will cancel out. And when I say cancel out, 2 divided by 2 cancels to be 1. So that first piece is going to be reduced down just to x plus 1. Then in my other set of brackets here, I have 3x's plus 10. So from here, we're just going to do FOIL again. So I get my 3x squared plus 10x plus 3x plus 10. How is that? Good. Okay, so from here, our total area, I need to add the 2. I'm going to rewrite it. Truthfully, if you've shown your work well enough, you could just add it as you go, but I will rewrite it for the sake of presentation. So I'm going to have my 6x squared plus 21x plus 18. To that, I'm going to add my 3x squared plus 13x plus 10. So we get that for our final answer. Sorry, Khalil, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, would it still be a level 5-6? I know you would have to take the trapezoid and split up into square, triangle, or whatever.
Sorry, say that again.
Would it still be a level 5-6 even though we would have to take the trapezoid and then say, okay, this is a triangle, this is a square. That would still be a 5-6.
Totally. Yep. You're applying what you know. That's kind of the piece of it. I'm not going to ask you to do if the area is 2.5. You don't have calculators. I don't expect you to go 2.5 squared times 934 times 2.5. I feel like that's mean. I would ask you maybe if the x was equal to 2, like if your numbers were simple, easy numbers for you to do because you don't have a calculator. I'm only going to give you simple ones. But what would I do on this question? You're just replacing that x with 2.5. That's it. But I'm not going to ask you to do that kind of thing. Okay, let's look at this next one. A rectangular garden with the length of 8 minus 3a meters and a width of a plus 8 contains 3 square flower beds, each with a side length of 2a plus 5. The remainder of the garden is grass. So A says let's draw a diagram to illustrate that information. So we have a rectangular garden. There's a length of 8 minus 3a and a width of a plus 8. Inside, I have 3 squares. It tells us it's a square. And then it tells us each one of those sides are 2a plus 5. A question like this, the diagram is not provided. And say I gave you this question on a test, do you think it's fair for you to raise your hand and ask if you drew the diagram correctly? No. Part of math is being able to interpret what the question's asking you correctly. So it's really important that you practice drawing things out to make sure you are interpreting it correctly. And I know that seems hard because it's kind of reading comprehension. It seems a little unfair, but that's kind of how it is. With math, you have to be able to interpret things. Try and think of it as black and white as possible. You could ask like some clarification things maybe, and like depending on your question, I would help you a little bit, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to interpret the question and draw diagrams appropriately. So write and simplify an expression for the area of grass in the garden. So we want to know the space like out here, right? Do you guys want to try this one on your own, or do you want me to go through it? I'll go through it. So let's figure out the area of the entire rectangle. So our large rectangle is going to be length times width, so 8 minus 3a by a plus 8. From that, I'm going to take away 3 of those squares. Those squares are 2a plus 5 by 2a plus 5. Coming up with that statement is a big component of this question. From here, it's like actually taking it through, but you need to be able to actually come up with that. Could you do this in parts? Totally. Our space isn't great here, so I'm going to do it as one big sentence. So I'm going to multiply out the first piece. So I'm going to get 8a plus 64 minus 3a squared minus 24a. I'm just going to rewrite that minus 3, and I'm going to multiply it in afterwards. Graydon, you with us? You're not writing this down. So then I get 4a squared plus 10a plus 10a plus 25. I'm going to clean up this first jumble of stuff and put it in the order that we usually see. That I find to be really helpful, right? It's all about making it more friendly for us. So I get negative 3a squared. I have 8 positive a's minus 24. So that gives me a negative 16a plus 64. This next one I'm going to do all in one step because I feel like we can handle that. So minus 3 times 4 gives me minus 12a squared. I have 10a and 10a, so I have 20 a's. 20 times 3 gives me 60, so it's going to be minus, I wrote 30 though, minus 60a, and then minus 75. From here, continue to combine like terms. So I get minus 15a squared minus 76a minus 11. How is that? Does that make sense? Is that okay? Awesome. I love it. Okay. Again, determine the area of the grass if a is equal to negative 1.5. I'm not going to make you go through this one, but this is what you would do. Negative 15 times negative 1.5 squared minus 76 times negative 1.5 minus 11. If you had a calculator and you actually followed that one through, you can go right ahead and do it, but that's what it's asking you to do. Okay, once you're done that one, turn the page. In math, what does a level 7-8 question look like for criteria 8? Like what's kind of like the requirements? What are us teachers trying to give you for 7-8 questions? Khalil?
Applying like what you know to a situation sort of like they're not familiar situations.
Good, awesome. So the big key word that IB uses, it's unfamiliar. It's something you haven't seen before explicitly. So it's something that I've taught you all of the means, but maybe you haven't seen those pieces together before. It's stuff that maybe often in math, we combine different units together. So this would be multiplying. Eventually I could add in trigonometry, which we'll learn later on. So it could be a couple things added together in one question. This next question is an awesome level 7-8. After we do it, is it a 7-8 any longer? No, good, because it's no longer unfamiliar. I want to give you guys a chance to try this one. So let's read it together just to make sure everyone understands it. And then I'm going to let you try and work on it for a bit yourself. Should 7-8 questions take a long time? Yeah, they're usually harder questions. So they take a little bit of thinking. They might be something that you don't know what to do right away. So the hypotenuse of a right triangle is 5x plus 5 centimeters long. And the lengths of the other two sides are 4x plus 8 centimeters and 3x minus 5. Form an equation and solve it to determine the lengths of the three sides of the triangle. So this is the first time this year that you're actually going to be solving for x. That's why it's unfamiliar. It's also a little bit more complicated because we're talking about a triangle and you're given some other pieces of information. When possible, my biggest hint for you is draw a diagram. And then label it. Some things to think about is like, think about what you know in relation to this. Okay, I want you to try this one. I will take it up, but I want to give you guys some time to try it. Say you try it and you get it, awesome. You can move on to the practice questions for today, which I'll post in just a second. At the end of the day in this question, you're coming up with a value. So you're going to tell me in how many centimeters each side of this triangle is. Okay, go, try, think hard. The first thing I would do on questions like this, and like I said, draw a diagram. And I'm going to try and model for you like the troubleshooting I would do on a question that might be trickier, that's hard. So first off, our hypotenuse is always the side opposite our 90-degree angle. Doesn't matter where I put my other two measurements for the other two sides. So we have this diagram, and now it's like, now what do I do? Well, for the past 3 years, I guess 2.5 years, every time I've given you or you've seen the word hypotenuse, what formula comes to mind? Right on, Pythagorean's theorem. So that's what I mean. Think about what we know in relation. Okay, so I know Pythagorean's theorem is going to come into play. Cool, I need to solve for x. But right now, I need to probably do something else before I can solve for x, right? Like there's that extra piece. Well, I know Pythagorean's theorem exists, so let's fill in Pythagorean's theorem and then kind of see where that takes us. So it doesn't matter, your order might be slightly different than mine, but I'm going to say this side is side A. So I get 4x plus 8 squared plus 3x minus 5 squared equals 5x plus 5 squared. Okay, a second check that's really helpful here is in order to solve for x, We need an equal sign where there's actually something on both sides. This is progress, okay? The one thing that I think is really intimidating with this question is we're going to have x squares in here, right? Like that's what comes up every time we multiply two binomials. With that, to keep in mind, we're only going to give you questions that you can solve. So once you get through, you'll see what happens. So I'm going to rewrite this out because I need that visual. If you don't, that is just fine. You could have written this out initially. I just heard a calculator open. You don't get a calculator. Sorry to shame you. You should be able to do this stuff in your head. Okay, 4x times 4x, so I get 16x squared. 4x times 8, so plus 32x, plus 32x, plus 64. So that's my first side squared. Let's just take it a step lower and clean it up. Okay, my next term, I'm just going to color code this for us. When I multiply out this next one, I'm going to get plus 9x squared, oops, minus 15x minus 15x plus 25. When I clean that up, I get 9x squared minus 30x plus 25. All of that's going to be equal to 25x squared plus 25x plus 25x plus 25. Okay, cool. Next step is what we've always been doing. We're going to combine like terms from here. So let's clean everything up. So I have 16x squared and 9x squared, so I get 25x squared. 64 minus 30 gives me a positive 34x's plus 89 equal to, just rewriting this. So from here, we need to isolate and solve for x. Super handy. There's 25x squared on both sides. We designed this question for you to be able to solve this. You cannot solve right now. We have not taught you. Maybe you've learned on your own. But we haven't taught you how to deal with x squares when you're solving for x's. So they're always going to cancel out at this point in time. So if I subtract 25x squared from both sides, that x squared term that's scary and uncomfortable is just gone, which is kind of nice. I want all of my x's on one side, so I'm going to subtract 34x from both sides. So those ones will be gone. I want all my 1's on one side, so I'm going to minus 25 from both sides. I'm doing this all in one step just to save rewriting. On this side, I'm going to be left with 16x's. On this side, I'm left with 64. Divide both sides by 16. Are you done? Oh, good, Jasmine. You actually have to solve for the side length. So now you actually need to plug this in and figure it out. So let's do our hypotenuse first. So we had 5x plus 5. I'm showing a lot of work. You could show less. So my hypotenuse is 25 centimeters. 4x plus 8. So I'm going to get 4 times 4 plus 8. 24 centimeters. And then our last side, (7 centimeters). Always, whenever you're doing a triangle that has Pythagorean's theorem or a right triangle, pause and do the check. Is your hypotenuse the longest side? 25 is longer than 24, so you know you did something right. So that's a good check that you always can do. That is a big question. There's a lot of pieces to it and a lot to figure out. Raise your hand if you got that right, if you figured it out. Nice, good. That was a hard question. If you were like on track and I cut you off, my apologies, but I just wanted to make sure we went over it.